It all begins in a VIP delivery room where a woman is on the verge of giving birth, nonchalantly browsing through a magazine. But her tolerance expires, and she shouts at the nurses to remove this child from her already, all while still perusing her magazine. Unexpectedly, a baby's wail resonates throughout the area, and a team member hurriedly approaches to commend the grandfather. Then, everyone begins applauding Miss Liu, who appreciates her visitors for their generosity. He then inquires of a maid where Shiquan is, and she responds that the young master had some matters to deal with on Earth. The lad's grandfather is enraged at his own child's absence, labeling him a total slacker. Just then, an unusual shriek emerges from within the delivery room, shocking everyone outside. Concerned about the circumstance, Miss Liu rises and inquires what on earth is happening in there. Meanwhile, in the chamber, the mother is in disbelief from the brilliant light glowing right in front of her. Upon entering the chamber, the grandfather and his associates are entirely immobilized. The illumination was emanating from the infant, who was enveloped in yellow bolts and appeared to be enjoying it all immensely. The infant believes that no one would have ever anticipated a plebeian would be reborn into this household, and even conscious in a celestial manner. A system display emerges, notifying him that the lightning-type divine perception has been initiated with sea-level strength. The grandfather is astonished because his grandson was just born with a capability he himself could never attain. Dropping his walking stick, the grandfather yells about the unmatched, inherent divine intuition his grandson has. Grandfather lifts his grandson and rejoices, proclaiming that the Liu family has at last generated a once-in-a-lifetime prodigy. However, the infant believes that he's going to utilize this opportunity to seize everything from the clan and ensure his father never gets to be reborn again. The servants remark on how the young master is already grinning and didn't even weep, which is an indication of a noble fate. The elder vows to utilize the complete strength of the clan to nurture the boy. The infant, who is also our main character, believes that the past 6 months since he was removed by that lowlife have seemed like a fantasy. 1 month after being reborn, his mother was consuming a unique elixir provided to her by one of her servants. As soon as she consumes the tonic, a strong golden radiance begins to shine all over her body. He acquired a hastened development capability and attained D level even as merely an embryo. He contemplates how peasants can never equal the strength of the clans and how he has already attained a status that many jeopardize their lives to reach. But our MC ponders what type of capability this is, as there are no documents of hastened development. 2 months afterward, he encountered an assimilation crisis from the mother's initial embryo, but obtained a reward. Utilizing his rapid development, he consumed the initial embryo and obtained its inherent lightning-type divine perception. He's excited to possess a lightning-type divine perception, which is one of the most uncommon elemental skills. The main character intends to utilize the household's finest assets to sustain himself and grow even more powerful. 3 months later, his lightning-type divine perception had already attained the intermediate phase of strength. We observe high heels and women's lingerie strewn on the ground of his mother's chamber. On the mattress, a few sets of feet are intertwined, becoming quite snug. We observe the woman with a blonde male while her child is still in her womb. The admirer inquires if she isn't frightened, and the woman replies her union is merely a political agreement. The embryo overhears the man doubting his fatherhood, while his mother merely requests additional. The MC expresses that all this turmoil is interfering with his energy intake rate, so he concludes up discharging a lot of power at once, causing her to grumble that it scorched her from the interior. At 6 months, his strength reaches maximum D level, and he comprehends his mother's condition. An attractive and calm visage is observing. The man watches the woman's abdomen and ponders when the darn infant is going to be delivered. Beside the womb, the MC opens his eyes and stares at his father with a gaze full of animosity. Through his sight, he mirrors the man's visage and labels him a dirty dog. In a recollection, we observe the young man in his previous existence being cautioned about dreadful creatures. One of his hurt associates tells Brother Liu to leave that place as quickly as he can. His companion is vanquished and calls out for assistance while the young man merely observes. Regrettably, his companion ended up being consumed by a grotesque creature while the young man observes it all unfold. With a malicious grin, the betrayer commands his troops to nourish the creature to create the essence core. The man grins wickedly and derisively as he observes his prey on the verge of being vanquished. At that instant, the young man perceives a massive thorn approaching him, poised to hit him. His previous ally pierces him with a large limb, raising him into the sky without any compassion. The main character gazed at the injury in his torso, astonished by the treachery he had just endured. The lowlife begins chuckling uncontrollably at his foe's pitiful moment. He ridicules him, stating that's what occurs when someone like him overvalues his own power. As he's cast aside, the young man charges him with deceiving him merely to nourish the creatures. As he's moving on, His sole concern is what will occur to his younger siblings. He recalls when he bid farewell to one of them, assuring he'd return home shortly. Shortly thereafter, his former self seizes a weapon and prepares to depart for a task. The door shuts and the three small girls are left by themselves, anticipating their brother's comeback. Gazing at the moon through the window, the girls ponder when their older brother will return. The rear in the establishment as a fetus brims with fury and vows retribution on the one who divided him from his siblings. With his strength, the fetus readies to strike his father, who is merely outside. Then the small fellow delivers a strong blow directly to the traitor's face, catching him entirely off guard. The effect of the strike propels the man soaring, and the mother is astonished by the hit she experienced. The lad's dad collapses to the earth in tremendous agony, not comprehending what just occurred to him. The lady complains that the rascal is already misbehaving before he's even properly delivered. The grandfather then instructs the nurse to verify what's occurring inside that chamber. The staff member clarifies that the young master's ability is exceptional, so his growth is hastened. She then discloses, astonished, that the infant is about to be delivered and the mother is entering labor. The lad mourns that prior to reincarnating, his cap was pinnacle DD tier, and now he's near a breakthrough. In tremendous agony, the mother shouts for them to contact the top delivery team as swiftly as feasible. When he reached 1 month old, the Liu family hosted a lavish celebration feast. Numerous significant families from southern Zhou arrive, bringing presents to honor the newborn. During the celebration, the grandfather observes a violin presentation with a maid beside him. Meanwhile, a 1-month-old main character is peacefully resting in the arms of one of the servants. One of the visitors commends Master Leo on having a grandson, but the elder appears absorbed in contemplation. A visitor commends the boy's dad while the infant gazes at the man who brought him down in his previous life. He becomes enraged witnessing the foe who divided him from his siblings and vows retribution right then and there. In his recollections, he recalls his younger siblings thrilled about a massive birthday cake. In his previous life, he was on the call with Brother Chun, who was lamenting about him being tardy for a mission. The young man expresses regret, and the merchant believes that he merely employed him due to gossip that he required funds. The man recommends him to utilize his intellect, and the young man expresses gratitude for the employment chance. His siblings waited enthusiastically to consume the tiny slice of cake on the table. The elder sibling bids farewell to one of them, assuring he had a position but would return shortly. Then he seizes his firearm, which was stored in a pouch, and readies to exit the residence. The door shuts and the three small girls are left by themselves, nervously anticipating his comeback. From the window, the girls observe the moon while anticipating their beloved brother to return. Elsewhere, a man nears a radiant portal in the center of a shadowy forest. Smoking a cigarette is the same individual who was praising young Master Ji at the gathering. Young Master Ji, who seems to be the chief of this perilous endeavor. With his aides by his side, young Master Ji inquires how the task is advancing. The man notifies him that they've been indoors for a while and the creature should be well nourished by now. Young Master Ji commends Old Chun, stating he was brought up properly and is consistently very effective. Then he shifts to his female associate and states they arrived solely for her before departing. But the woman sneers, stating he's merely another underachiever from the Ji family attempting to ascend the hierarchy. With that, the team of merchants approaches the gateway to exit the barren location. Meanwhile, one of our hero's allies cautions him about a formidable creature close by. The young master is astonished that someone is still living as he requires more sustenance for the medicine. Old Chun states he doesn't understand how that's feasible since they were all merely D-level troops. Abruptly, a tremendously loud sound grabs everyone's focus and they all gaze in the same direction. The team's leader evaluates the circumstance with a grave expression. Shortly afterward, they notice that one of the creatures has a recent injury on its leg. The creature then stares at our protagonist, who is standing solitary in the center of that barren location. Despite being fatigued and wounded, the young man remains steadfast, prepared for the ultimate confrontation. At that instant, one of the merchants gradually advances. Young Master Ji insists on knowing where that object originated and how it had the audacity to harm his creature. Upon spotting the survivor, young Master Ji is astonished and addresses him as Yi Chen. The young man pivots and shouts to Brother Chun, not comprehending what's occurring. Yi Chen's companion inquires if he brought backup while the foes retreat. Back in the current time, the infant promises to retaliate the intense blood rivalry at that exact instant. He stretches his arms and produces infant sounds at the merchant, who observes him closely. The man is at a loss for words and falters, attempting to comprehend what the infant desires from him. The lad's father states his child desires to be embraced and that this is the utmost privilege of his existence. With that, he lifts the infant and expresses gratitude for the prize while the tiny one feigns sobbing. As soon as the man grasps him, the small one begins to emit a yellow energy. Then he utilizes his lightning-type ability to deliver his foe a truly unpleasant jolt. The merchant yells in agony as the electric current flows through his whole body. From the surprise, he ultimately drops the baby, who falls heavily onto the mansion floor. The ladies at the gathering are surprised and glance toward the sound. The performers also cease playing, astonished by all the uproar. The lad's grandfather observes everything with a solemn demeanor. With that, the lad's guardians are astonished by what just occurred. The small main character on the ground, the elderly man, understands he just committed an error. The infant begins wailing noisily to maintain facades and deceive all. The merchant panics at the circumstance and begins sweating profusely, frightened of what could occur. Enraged, the grandfather shouts at the man for having the audacity to drop the Liu family's valuables on the ground. The timid person throws himself on the ground, claiming it wasn't him and that the young master acted independently. But the infant's father doesn't trust him and strikes him forcefully, labeling the man a dog. The strike is so powerful that the man goes soaring and crashes heavily on the mansion floor. He begins to kneel and pleads with his master for compassion. He vows he would never harm the boy and presents his riches to mend him from the tumble. The small child's father appears to be relishing the entire scenario and offers a derisive grin. Then the master commands them to pull the man outside and administer a thorough beating. The merchant appreciates him for the discipline while the servant retrieves the infant once more. In the woman's embrace, the small protagonist offers a wicked, pleased grin at the outcome. With a battered forehead, the foe gazes on, perplexed, not comprehending what occurred. The small one persists in shouting and weeping noisily to uphold his flawless facade in front of all. The elderly merchant is astonished once more that he began weeping again. The grandfather instructs the maid to bring the young master indoors and verify if he was injured in the tumble. The senior reprimands his son, stating that with the family's position, they don't require a worthless loafer like that. With a contemptuous snort, the leader of the family pivots and departs the gathering, enraged about the entire chaos. The lad's father is furious about the elderly man's remarks and grips the glass in his hand with tremendous strength. He breaks the glass cup with his bare hands. The presenter pivots and strikes a forceful kick directly to the merchant's face. Immediately afterward, he strikes him again and commands him to be pulled outside and given to the house dogs. The sentinels seize him as he pleads for compassion, but no one concerns themselves with his anguish. The host instructs the visitors to carry on the celebration, and the infant contemplates how to gather more energy. The physician assesses the young child and states he has an amazing build and is completely well. The grandfather chuckles and rejoices that his grandson experienced no injury and is in superb health. But the most crucial thing for the boy now is to locate his 3 siblings he abandoned. He must mature quickly enough to shift and obtain that woman's essence. The infant begins wailing for milk in the physician. With that, the elder commands them to summon his daughter-in-law to nurse him and take additional spiritual medicine. The lad's mother expresses that she just nourished him and is already entirely drained. The family leader states she must strive diligently for the future of the group and for the welfare of her child. The lady removes her jacket and gets ready to nourish the infant once again against her shell. The small one opens his mouth and begins weeping as he anticipates being nourished by his mother. The mother lifts him up and gazes at him with her crimson eyes. She begins to nurse him and complains that the little scamp is sucking far too hard. Noticing that his daughter-in-law is becoming frail, the grandfather instructs them to fetch her the restorative broth. Shortly afterward, we observe the infant enjoying a bath with his mother in a thermal spring. The lady expresses that he's been struggling for a long time and inquires if she owes him something from a previous existence. 3 months afterward, the infant is already moving around the home and his strength has reached sea level. In his previous life, it required him a year to progress from elementary D tier to intermediate. At that time, he participated in numerous perilous assignments in portals and endured countless wounds. He's progressed from basic C level to intermediate in just 3 months by consuming milk. During a family meal, the small protagonist crawls toward the central table. Angry, the grandfather grumbles that some fool wasn't supervising the young master and allowed him to roam. The servant expresses regret, stating the child moves so quickly she can't follow him. The infant's dad jokes that his child must desire milk again, and the mother appears fatigued. She grumbles that the lad has been on her chest for 3 months and that she requires a respite. But the small one believes he can't squander time and must continue becoming stronger and stronger. To everyone's astonishment, the infant rises up by himself for the initial time. The grandfather and the steward are utterly astonished to witness the incredible scene in front of them. The lad begins strolling toward his mother, who observes him astonished. The small one leaps on her and the mother yells for him to allow her to have a meal in tranquility. The servant is amazed and indicates demonstrates that the young master is upright and moving about the room on his own. The steward remarks that the lad has a heavenly physique and his growth is remarkable. The grandfather is delighted to see his grandson can already stand and observes him with pride. Then he states that in accordance with family regulations, it's time to choose a personal attendant for the boy. In a dim location, the elder inquires about the outcomes and a guard replies only 2 remain. In his mother's embrace, the main character is brought to a makeshift venue for the examination. He observes everything closely when he unexpectedly identifies one of the contenders and is astonished. In a chamber, a small girl with pale hair is in a protective posture and appears terrified. On the opposite side, a blonde girl rushes ahead shouting to assault and conquer her rival in the arena. Astonished, the infant ponders what she's doing there and his form starts to radiate brightly. Then he employs his lightning-type ability to shock one of the battling girls. With the power of the impact, the blonde girl goes soaring and lands roughly on the ground, unconscious immediately. The pale-haired girl seizes the opportunity to leap on the loaf. Without a moment's hesitation, the girl seizes the bread and begins consuming it ravenously in the center of the cell. Mother's hair is all upright. The protagonist frets, wishing no one observed anything odd. The grandfather chuckles and states his grandson possesses a far superior fighting spirit than his own dad. The lad believes that being a child is beneficial because grown-ups always create justifications for him. The elder determines the young girl will be the attendant and instructs her to be cleaned and educated in manners. The small one persists in consuming ravenously, disregarding everything else nearby. The infant in the crib appears very joyful and calls out to his new attendant with a grin on his face. Meanwhile, the steward clarifies that she is a demise attendant and must safeguard the young master. The small white-haired girl simply nods her head, embracing her new destiny. He also states she must adhere to the instructor and practice in combat skills while he rests. With that, the small maid goes to the infant's room to begin her new position. Upon reaching, the boy shouts to her and gestures to himself with a very enthusiastic grin. But the girl draws a knife and her demeanor shifts to one brimming with animosity and retribution. The infant panics and attempts to talk but can't due to his vocal cords. She claims she's going to take him out to retaliate for her older brother's demise right then and there. The girl lifts the weapon and gets ready to strike the small one in his crib. The attendant lunges with the blade at rapid speed, prepared to strike her unprotected target. However, the lad evades the strike with remarkable nimbleness and leaps out of the crib. He descends onto the ground, leaving behind an energy outline, much to the girl's astonishment. Then the infant re-emerges beside her, leaving her entirely astonished and mute. Unexpectedly, the girl begins to emit a green glow as she readies herself to battle. The main character is astonished to observe that the girl possesses a victory kind of celestial perception. With that, she assaults him with her air strength, but the infant utilizes his electricity to protect himself. The two forces collide, brightening the whole space with their vivid and powerful hues. He believes that utilizing both his abilities simultaneously is excessive for his infant body. He has a clever notion to solve this intricate predicament, so the MC indicates and utilizes his thunder divine perception at a very minimal power level. With that, a tiny bolt of lightning strikes the girl. The surprise immobilizes her for an instant and she collapses to the ground, incapable of moving correctly. The small one appears relieved with the outcome, but is evidently very fatigued from the exertion. Reclining on the ground, the attendant can still sense the energy coursing through her whole body. He advances cautiously and contacts the keen edge. That the small one slices his finger intentionally and a drop of blood emerges on the hint. Then he utilizes his own blood to inscribe a message on the ground for her. He believes it's a positive aspect he's intelligent and succeeded in devising this strategy to convey. Upon perusing the note, the girl comprehends everything and the infant extends his arms for an embrace. But the girl strikes him again and the baby recalls she can't read yet. He evades the hit and frets because if someone witnesses her attempting to assault him, she'll be finished. Meanwhile, the merchant strolls through the estate carrying a wooden container in his hands. In a recollection, the boy's dad states that he's only living because he's still beneficial to him. Reclining on the ground, the man expresses gratitude to the young master for his compassion and vows to exert more effort. The expert states the grandfather is enraged and that he must discover a method to satisfy the infant. The individual believes that he sold all he possessed to purchase a unique object at a bidding event. Unexpectedly, he perceives the small master's voice and contemplates what's occurring in the chamber. With that, he unlocks the door and steps into the room, summoning for the heir of the Liu family. Upon entering, he is greeted with the sight of the two of them pursuing each other around the room. Noticing a chance, the infant stares at the man with a sinister expression and a scheme in mind. The merchant is entirely perplexed, not comprehending anything that's occurring. Then the lad lad seizes the attendant's hand and twists the blade. He utilizes his lightning ability to provide the white-haired girl a slight jolt on her forehead. She drops to the ground and the infant grabs the knife in midair, fulfilling his flawless scheme. Without reluctance, the infant pierces himself in the shoulder and the blade becomes coated in blood. The merchant is completely astonished by the spectacle and yells in fright, not trusting his vision. Next, the boy hurls the bloody blade towards the man observing him. The unfortunate fellow grabs the weapon in midair and halts in terror, unsure of what to do. In his astonishment, he ultimately drops the container he was grasping. Then the small main character takes a deep inhalation, getting ready for his grand presentation. Soon after, he begins crying loudly over the unconscious girl on the carpet. The man grips the crimson blade, utterly hopeless about the entire circumstance. At the noise, the grandfather and the others rush over to see what occurred. The elder and his offspring gaze at the spectacle with grave faces. The small one continues weeping and relies on the attendant to make it appear as though he shielded her. Angry, the grandfather gestures at the merchant and blames him for attempting to assault his grandson. The man tosses the knife onto the ground and attempts to protect himself, claiming he wasn't the one at fault. But the dad doesn't trust him and strikes him for having the audacity to harm his child. Frantically, he clarifies that the girl assaulted the baby and he protected himself. The infant persists in his wailing performance while the merchant yells in anguish with a crimson nose. He vows to the elder that he's speaking the truth, but no one appears to trust his tale. The boy's father strikes him with another blow and angrily inquires where the present is. Desperate, the man searches for the present he dropped on the ground amid all the turmoil. The grandfather commends the little girl for safeguarding his grandson and instructs her to be taken to relax. The senior places his hand on the young master's shoulder, who stiffens. The senior glares at him, his crimson eyes shining fiercely with fury. He claims he instructed his son how to rear dogs, but he nearly lost the Liu family's faith. The team exits the chamber, leaving the merchant crouching on the ground, completely frightened. The man begins to sweat profusely and shake with dread of what could occur to him now. Abruptly, the infant's father pivots and scowls at him with an expression brimming with animosity and disdain. He strikes him forcefully and states he provided him an opportunity, but he had the audacity to attempt to harm him regardless. The man attempts to clarify, but the master commands him to be pulled out and offered to the dogs. Observing his strategy triumph, the small main character finally exhales in relief at the result. With an injury on his shoulder, the small one gazes at the unresponsive girl on the ground, concerned. Just then, the steward approaches and states he needs to take the attendant to be cared for right away. But he freaks out when he recalls he penned a note on the ground directly beneath her. So the boy reclines on top of the girl and shakes his head to prevent the man from taking her. The employee then lifts the small master, raising him off the unresponsive girl. With that, the steward puts him back in the crib while the child appears very troubled. Noticing that the man is about to lift the servant, he contemplates if he should incapacitate him with an electric jolt. Abruptly, a thought hits him and he gazes at the maid with a fresh scheme in mind. The employee lifts the small girl and a puddle of blood is left on the sleeping area floor. The main character is astonished to discover that the attendant is also truly harmed. Noticing the blood mark on the girl's garments, the butler is also quite astonished. The small one is perplexed by the circumstance and doesn't comprehend how she might have been injured. That he brings her outside and instructs the young master's room to be tidied up. Solitary in the crib, the boy exhales in relief but ponders what is happening. But he sets it aside as he has more significant matters to attend to at that moment. He leaps out of the crib, prepared for his next scheme. In a massage chamber, a unique oil is being readied for his mother. The woman then obtains a soothing back massage from one of the housekeepers. The lad's mother appears quite calm, savoring her uncommon instance of tranquility. But the calmness concludes when the small one requests milk, abruptly surprising her. He creeps over to her and the woman grumbles that he's present again with his enormous hunger. The lad starts to nourish and the mother grumbles, inquiring how long he's going to continue sucking. But he must accelerate his development so he can converse and clarify everything to his attendant. A week later, time is simply racing by in the elegant Liu family estate. And just like that, our primary character now appears like a 3-year-old and has finally grasped the art of speaking. The small white-haired maid is still giving him some serious sidelong glances. She's still certain he's the one at fault for everything that occurred with her older sibling. So the child turns to E and just reveals the truth. He's her sibling. The girl is like completely stunned. She simply freezes up and her eyes change to a dark hue of red. Then he inquires if the cake her sibling purchased for her was any good. That inquiry takes her down memory lane and she begins becoming extremely sentimental. In her recollections, she remembers her brother summoning her and her other siblings to come consume some cake. The three small girls become wildly thrilled spotting a birthday cake directly in front of them. She recalls her older brother slicing a piece of cake for his younger sisters. The girl remembers him on the phone, receiving instructions to join his squad for a task. One of the sisters attempts to grab a piece, but another one halts her, instructing her to wait for their brother. Subsequently, the three youngsters are at the window observing the moon and anticipating his arrival. Back in that instant, the visage of his former self emerges mirrored in the full moon like a recollection. In the moon's reflection, his old visage merges with his present baby face. He gazes at the small girl with a tender grin, his eyes filling up with tears. Recognizing it's him, she can't contain it any longer and simply begins weeping. She tumbles to the ground and begins sobbing her eyes out, just crying uncontrollably. He covers her lips and hushes her so no one discovers their secret. With his small hand, he attempts to silence the girl's cries so they don't get discovered. Immediately after, she wraps her arms around him, embracing him with all her strength, experiencing a blend of relief and joy. Still weeping, the small girl inquires if the one before her is truly her cherished brother. But the embrace is so snug that he grumbles he can't inhale in his little child form. She releases him and our guy is a bit lightheaded, attempting to regain his breath. Once he recuperates, he becomes earnest and gazes at his sister, requiring explanations. She observes him closely, tears still flowing down her face. So he seizes her and inquires how she arrived here and where their other siblings are. With numerous inquiries, the girl becomes inundated and requests her brother to ease up. Ultimately, the pair of them settle down and prepare to discuss all that has occurred. The girl begins to clarify that on that day, he departed for a task and simply never returned. In a recollection, the three famished sisters are anticipating, gazing at the cake he purchased. One of the girls questioned why their sibling was taking so long to return. The smallest one even inquires if he deserted them since he'd never been away for so long. So Yi chose to go search for him and discovered information about his vanishing at the mission headquarters. There, she observed another hunter's spouse shouting at the betrayer about her partner disappearing. The man with no tolerance labeled her insane and pushed her aside aggressively. Another tracker appears and charges the man with entering the portal with young Master Lu and the others. In that instant, the small maid girl realized that this man was responsible for everything. The betrayer merely observes with an irritated expression on his face, nonchalantly puffing on his cigarette. He releases his firepower, preparing to assault his accuser. A fireball hurtles toward the man who's just paralyzed in terror by the assault. He receives a direct blow and his body is entirely consumed by the fierce flames. The man falls to the earth, vanquished, while the others merely observe the spectacle, taking no action. He cautions them that disseminating gossip about the young master is a foolish action since the task was high risk. Our fellow states the betrayer received what was due to him for double-crossing them, and then inquires about the other females. Listening to the inquiry about the others, the small one's demeanor shifts and she appears quite anxious. She begins weeping all over again, leaving her sibling completely bewildered. Astonished by his sibling's abrupt response, he anxiously inquires what occurred to them. Through her sobs, the girl clarifies she merely wished to seek vengeance for her brother, but then a complete wave of demons just materialized out of thin air. Flashback to a gateway tearing apart and everyone is just rushing for their survival as the assault commences. The recollection of that fiendish wave has her completely frozen. She rushes through the ruined streets, desperately shouting the names of her other two siblings. Meanwhile, a pair of hunters walk by, casually commenting that, yep, this gigantic wave was a rather unpleasant one. She's remained standing all by herself, merely observing as the city ignites, entirely destroyed. With tears flowing down her cheeks, she dashes aimlessly through all the turmoil and devastation. The unfortunate girl persists in her quest alone, navigating her way through the debris of the city ruined by the incursion. With her hands all scratched up, she falls to the earth, shouting her sister's names in utter hopelessness. That's when she recalls her sibling and just collapses in tears and contemplates where he might possibly be. Back in the current time, our host's primary character reassures his sibling, telling her not to weep because they've been granted a second opportunity. His eyes blaze crimson as he promises that some fellow named Chun is going to be the very first to suffer for this. In a bleak and filthy jail, we transition to a corridor that's merely splattered with marks. The betrayer is confined, yelling his lungs out that he's blameless and was merely present to present a present. Next thing you realize, he's crashed against the cell bars, an expression of sheer fright on his face. Because shock, a demon appears right behind the frightened captive. The betrayer falls to his knees, pleading for his existence as the beast approaches, its tongue hanging out. All we listen to is a terrified shriek, and abruptly the prison corridor has a couple more crimson marks. The betrayer out of the scene, our host announces it's time to flip the whole Lu family upside down. Tears tears still in her eyes, his sibling concurs, assuring she'll do whatever he instructs. That's when she recalls she has a very significant task to attend to with our host, so she just lifts him into the air declaring it's bath time, but he objects, shouting that he's her sibling. But the girl clarifies that now she's his private aide and this is her everyday task. And just like that, she begins taking him off to the restroom, all while he's yelling bloody murder that he definitely, unquestionably does not want a bath. Cut to the restroom where our host is now perched in a wash basin as she prepares everything for his bath. She approaches him and states it's time to remove his garments, but our host insists he can manage it alone. But she's not paying attention, and with a smile, she simply consumes his garments right into the atmosphere. She gazes downward and tweets about how adorable his tiny buddy is. Our host is utterly embarrassed, essentially perishing on the inside from the sheer discomfort of it. Extremely ashamed, he shouts at her not to gaze, reminding her once more that this is so not acceptable. She then announces that since she's larger now, it's her opportunity to give Gia him a wash. Astonished, the MC inquires what on earth she's doing as she begins removing her own garments. The lad shields his eyes, entirely ashamed by her behavior. Then, she enters the tub, enveloped in a towel, leaving the boy completely astonished. While she's cleaning him, she expresses frustration about how much individuals are enduring out there while the wealthy just squander everything. Our host becomes enraged and states that fairness is something you must seize with your own hands. With that, his visage adopts an expression of intense resolve to alter their existence. A moment later, the girl proposes to wash him, rather sending him into a complete panic. They begin arguing because he declines, but she asserts she was directed to do it. After the bath, the boy is reclining on the floor while his sister stores away his garments. He's contemplating how embarrassing it is to be the older sibling and get treated like a young child. The girl inquires what's the matter, but he merely turns his face aside, sulking, and doesn't respond. She feels unhappy about his demeanor and expresses that he's never been this cruel to her previously. To prevent further discussion, just lets out a sigh. But then he rises, states he's not angry anymore, and that he has something significant to inquire. The girl grins gently and tells him to proceed and ask whatever he wishes, no issue. So, he inquires if she has roused wind element capabilities, and his sibling verifies it. Our MC is astonished because the earliest documented instance of an awakening was at age 12. He ponders how she succeeded in accomplishing such an achievement, being so youthful and with no instruction. She merely shakes her head and states she's not truly certain how it occurred either. She clarifies that a panel just appeared, displaying her statistics and directing her to unleash her power. Our MC is utterly astonished to hear the term panel coming from her. In that moment, he recalls his own mechanism, the one that showcases his thunder powers. He looks at the interface and ponders if her dialogue box is the same type of object. Then he inquires how his sibling also received a panel and awakened so remarkably young. She observes he's spaced out and inquires if anything's amiss, but he merely dismisses it. He informs her that now that she's roused her capability, she must practice diligently to become powerful. With a resolute expression, the small girl responds that she's going to practice extremely hard from now on. He strokes her on the head and states that out of all the siblings, she was always the most dependable one. Unexpectedly, they both listen to a rap at their bedroom entrance and halt. A servant declares that supper is prepared and that the master instructed their mother to make some milk for him. She gives a complete baby bottle to the MC sibling, who merely gazes at it, astonished. She grabs the bottle and our MC strolls over to her with a fresh strategy already developing in his mind. He states they must utilize every asset the Liu family possesses to become more powerful and quickly. The girl inquires how they're meant to accomplish that, since she's already practicing as diligently as she can to advance. With a playful smirk, he instructs her to open her mouth and unveil the secret to strength. Although she's a bit reluctant, the girl opens her mouth, inquisitive about what her brother is up to. He then places the bottle into her mouth and instructs her to drink up and observe what occurs. In accordance with his command, she begins consuming the milk while our MC observes her closely. All at once, a violet aura begins swirling around her, and she's astonished by the feeling. Perplexed, she inquires her sibling why so much energy is streaming into her body so effortlessly. Our MC clarifies that their mother's distinctive makeup transforms crystals into something akin to pure energy. He states it's a material that even top teams would have a difficult time acquiring during operations. But their mother can generate this essence continuously, making her an infinite source of energy. His sibling is astonished, remarking that this is something unprecedented at the academy. Our MC believes that the aristocratic families are concealing truths and influencing the populace into waging their conflicts for them. With a resolute stare, he determines that they must reveal every single one of these concealed mysteries. His sibling then presents him the bottle, advising him to consume some as well so he can become more powerful. But he declines, instructing her to complete it all and reach her power threshold first. Then he begins strolling away, his gaze focused on his upcoming goal. He states aloud that he's going to leave, dine, while his sister continues sipping from the bottle. Reaching his mother's chamber, the servants ponder why he's returned there once more. The following thing we observe is the boy nursing directly from his mother in the family's pool. The lady expresses that she's already given so much milk that the little rascal just consumes and consumes without pausing. One of the servants swiftly instructs the others to ready additional therapeutic dishes for the madam. Our host contemplates that the retribution begins now and that he and his sibling are about to alter the very arrangement of the skies. As thunder strikes down over the estate, he vows that he will flip the Liu family entirely upside down. Our champion creeps across his sleeping quarters floor, a resolute expression on his face as he looks for something. Meanwhile, we receive a recollection of the betrayer panicking, shouting that the present was in his grasp as he desperately searches for. Then our host glances beneath a piece of furniture and notices the small box the betrayer left behind. With a contented grin, he seizes the present, assuming it must be something exceptionally precious to the family. He then opens the container and a vivid blue glow brightens his small face. Inside, he discovers a sizable blue gem and ponders if it's an enchanted creature crystal. A system panel instantly appears, notifying him that it's an uncommon thunder element skill crystal. Our host is perplexed as he had no clue abilities could be acquired instead of developed. The system clarifies that following the pursuit of evolved creatures, there's a possibility to obtain these uncommon items. Our small boy is astonished that something like this even exists, but becomes wary, inquiring how the voice knows his ideas. In that instant, he's completely astonished, an expression of sheer terror on his face as he understands what's occurred. The voice claims it's in his awareness and he sneers, stating he understands all about these cliches from books. He recalls that in his previous life, he was a pupil obsessed with games and online novels that featured systems. In those tales, the primary characters receive prizes and reverse the situation, obtaining vengeance on their foes. Angry, he shouts that the system is worthless, but the voice replies that without it, he wouldn't have even been reborn. The host hesitates, reflects for a moment, and must concede the enigmatic voice has a valid argument. With his arms folded, he then inquires about its relation to his little sister's system. The voice rejects any kind of connection and encourages him to become more powerful and quickly. He concurs and becomes concentrated, realizing he must seize every chance he can obtain. He then settles down on the ground and with deep focus starts to take in the crystal's energy. With that, a strong, celestial energy begins coursing through his tiny body. A moment afterward, he extends his hand and effectively invokes his new ability, Lightning Spear. He's utterly astonished, having just obtained a talent that should have required 10 years to perfect. He senses the energy concentrated in the spear and ponders just how potent it truly is. Without a moment's hesitation, he throws the weapon with all his strength to try out his new ability. The main character observes as his strong electric strike soars through the atmosphere. The noise of the blast captures the grandfather's focus, who rushes over with the steward to discover what occurred. But what they discover is the boy's dad in his SpongeBob undergarments, lamenting to the MC's mother about the racket. The grandfather and the MC's younger sibling are utterly astonished by the spectacle. The lad gazes at the enormous gap he just created in the estate wall with his new ability. Angry, the grandfather insists on finding out who did it, and the butler clarifies he heard a thunderclap come from the room. But upon observing his grandson, the elderly man's mood changes and he raises him up, rejoicing in his new divine talent. He then commends the boy's mother, expressing gratitude for being so industrious for the family. However, the boy's father appears annoyed by the entire situation and grumbles about the commotion he created. At that, the grandfather reprimands him, stating he ought to be proud of his son's remarkable skill. The grandfather then determines he will bring his grandson to the family's yearly hunting festival. A moment later, the family leader inquires of the butler if everything is organized for the occasion. The elderly man chuckles, stating his offspring must discover their genuine value from an early age. Cradled in his mother's embrace, our main character is irritated, having no clue what they're scheming, and so the team strolls down an extended corridor toward the site of the hunting festival. Once there, the grandfather utilizes his strength to open a huge circular entrance in front of them. The gate opens, disclosing a vast, swirling whirlpool of vivid purple energy to all. Standing before the dimensional gateway, the family leader prepares to guide the group within. The MC is astonished, discovering the Liu family can create dimensional gateways all on their own. He becomes furious, contemplating how many mysteries the influential conceal from the vulnerable who are merely striving to exist. The team then strides through the gateway and reaches a thick, tranquil woodland on the opposite side. While the grandfather commends him, the MC's snake's mother grumbles that he never ceases consuming all day. Suddenly, the MC's father gestures to the sky and shouts a caution that something is nearing. Everyone gazes up to observe a smoke plume approaching them swiftly. The enigmatic object darts through the woods at astonishing velocity. Soon, a colossal multi-headed serpent emerges and viciously assaults a group of hunters. One hunter attempts to hit the creature, but his armament breaks while another employs a force field to protect himself. When he observes a C-rank python and AB-rank python monarch in a C-rank portal, the main character and his sibling are in disbelief, and the girl identifies one of the trackers. Just then, one of the snakes lunges toward one of the female trackers. To everyone's astonishment, the red-haired girl succeeds in keeping the creature's mouth ajar with her bare hands. But she's battling with all her strength to evade being bitten by the enormous creature's pointed teeth. Even so, the snake's power is too immense and it pushes her aside with a single strike. The hunter's chief then shouts for everyone to battle as they withdraw from the perilous zone. The team's chief attempts to ward off the creature with a barrier, but another tracker seeks to assault him from the rear. The crimson-haired girl dashes and yells urgently for him to be cautious, but the hunter's strike goes straight through the barrier, striking the captain with full power. The strength of the blow causes the hunter battling the serpent to drop his shield. At that instant, the enormous snake is hit by a violet lightning strike originating from another pursuer. Another hunter shouts angrily at the betrayer for assaulting their leader. The betrayer just grins maliciously as he readies to assault the other man. With a fierce strike, he ruthlessly assaults the hunter, leaving him seriously wounded. One of the other hunters is astonished as he appears to have identified the assailant. He discloses that the individual is Kuei Ai Shang, a felon who had been sentenced previously. Kuei Shang begins chuckling like a lunatic at the hunter's hopelessness. He then strikes the man, propelling him through the air with astonishing power. The wounded hunter flies straight into the jaws of the enormous snake, which was anticipating him. Our small main character observes it all with a stern demeanor. He recalls his previous existence when Kuei Shang tossed a companion to his doom. A splash of crimson emerges representing what just occurred. He back then observed his friends get eliminated one by one. The creature they were nourishing with their own allies' surfaces, formidable and frightening. With a harsh grin, the MC's father commands them to nourish the beast to create a treasure. He then instructs Kuei Shang to assault our hero's former self without a moment's hesitation. The thug dashes toward the young man, prepared to strike, but the fellow engages his ability and steadies himself for the unavoidable confrontation with his foe. Ice Fist radiates with a strong energy as he approaches. Their two hands clash in a fierce, strength-filled collision. He informs us that Kuei Shang is akin to a fiend who delights in crushing individuals. It's disclosed that he was safeguarded by the Liu family and is now one of their thugs. Back in the current time, his sibling ponders how they can potentially rescue the red-haired girl. But our main character appears to have a notion and his eyes sparkle, a strategy already taking shape in his thoughts. So he pivots and begins providing again, which truly annoys his mom. She inquires what on earth he's doing as our host fills his mouth with milk, making a strange expression. He expels everything, leaving her utterly astonished. Repulsed, she yells at our protagonist for making her all dirty and simply consumes him into the atmosphere. Noticing the disturbance, the boy's grandpa wears this enraged expression on his face due to the entire chaos. Right after the MC's younger sibling springs into action. Just like that, she grabs our protagonist mid-air, rescuing him from the bottom. The girl touches down securely on the earth, cradling her little brother gently in her arms. She inquires if her sibling is fine, and he clarifies his grand scheme to generate chaos to rescue the hunter. Abruptly, our young man's father strikes his wife forcefully across the face, leaving her utterly astonished. He then seizes her firmly and reprimands her for being so negligent with their son. Furious, the woman states that not even her own guardians ever ventured to touch her, and she becomes extremely enraged. With that, she conjures an ice weapon and goes straight after her spouse, seeking retribution. The man protects himself with his abilities, stating she must be instructed for her boldness. The children observe closely as the brawl develops right in front of them. The mother and father conflict with their skills, but a surge of power unexpectedly emerges between them. The boy's grandfather arrives, and the MC's parents merely gaze at him. The grandfather states that, as a parent, she should prioritize her child and not be so careless. With an intense stare, he informs them they both bear the obligation for both of their households. At that, the pair relaxes and puts away their arms, while the youngsters observe from afar. The MC's sibling inquires what they'll do next, but he assures her not to fret because they are arriving. Unexpectedly, the young servant perceives an unusual sound. The steward notifies the grandfather that he detected motion originating from the adjacent forest. The family also observes something nearing and goes on high alert. Just then, 3 goblins appear appear from the woods with some truly strange expressions on their faces. From an elevated perspective, we observe the goblins beginning to encircle the MC's family. The beings begin shrieking frantically, as if they're preparing for a conflict. Next thing you realize, the three creatures are pierced by wooden posts that penetrate right through them ruthlessly. The MC's parent questions how this is feasible, since the region was meant to have been evacuated beforehand. The grandfather grumbles, this is what occurs when all you understand is how to create chaos in pubs instead of studying the texts. Just then, the lad's mother begins to radiate with a violet energy. The younger sibling clarifies that their mother's spirit draws in demonic creatures, particularly advanced ones. With that, the noises of numerous goblins' feet begin getting nearer, putting the group on alert. Then a swarm of superior goblins emerges before them, guided by AB rank. One of the creatures jumps toward the family, its axe prepared to hit without compassion. Unperturbed, the grandfather instructs his subordinates to manage the situation promptly. And just like that, the family begins battling the creatures utilizing their strong elemental powers. Capitalizing on all the disorder, our MC informs his sister it's time for them to leave that place. So, the girl sprints toward a precipice with her younger brother in her embrace. Without a moment's hesitation, the MC's sibling leaps off the precipice, descending at rapid velocity with our young protagonist. In that moment, the girl's eyes shine brightly as she engages her unique power. Utilizing her wind energy, she starts to soar through the heavens, transporting her sibling to safety. Our MC inquires when she discovered how to fly, and she replies it was a prize from the system. Taken aback by this disclosure, our MC becomes flustered and asks what type of task it was. The girl discloses with a grin that the system's assignment was merely to provide her sibling a bath. In a recollection, we observe that upon finishing the task, she obtained the uncommon flying method as a prize. Our MC becomes irritated, pondering how a system could provide such an incredible reward for such a trivial task. The MC's small red-haired sibling is battling valiantly against a snake, hitting it with her keen blade. But then, another massive serpent emerges and assaults the other hunters, breaking their shields effortlessly. With one forceful blow, the creature propels one of the hunters airborne, entirely shattering her defense. Down on the earth, the woman urgently shouts to her leader that they can't continue battling anymore. The team's leader then challenges Kuei Xiong, inquiring why he's assaulting them in this manner. With a malicious grin, the betrayer states he delights in listening to the cries of his prey. The chief inquires who his superior is and states that breaching the guild's pact is contrary to the law. The antagonist responds that regulations are only for the feeble and for ordinary people like them, and that he couldn't care less. Immediately after he dashes towards the captain at rapid speed, prepared to deliver a strike. But rather, he assaults one of the female trackers, surprising her unexpectedly with his remarkable swiftness. Conquered, the woman pleads with her captain to rescue her from this dreadful, ruthless man. Without any compassion, the betrayer hurls her straight into the enormous serpent's jaws as a treat. The enormous snake consumes the hunter without a trace of compassion, right in front of all. In anguish, the captain shouts that the mission has collapsed and instructs everyone to flee for their lives. The auburn-haired girl is immobilized with terror and astonishment from the dreadful scene she just observed. Overcome by fury, the team leader lunges ahead with his blade, shouting that he's going to eliminate the betrayer. He releases a strong blow, but the antagonist moves swiftly and evades the assault with ease. In a moment, the betrayer retaliates and strikes a direct blow on the captain. Observing her leader injured, the young woman labels the man a beast and readies to battle. She then hurls an item at the foe, attempting to gain some time. But the betrayer doesn't even react since the stone the girl tossed does nothing to him. The strike just tears apart a section of the traitor's shirt. The antagonist states it's a pity they encountered him here because they are all going to die. He jumps towards the girl, his keen claws prepared to attack. Frightened, the young lady is encircled by the fragments of a broken sword. At the final moment, the captain leaps in front of her, absorbing the lethal strike in her stead. The chief collapses motionless to the earth as the betrayer merely disregards him and proceeds. The betrayer hurls the captain's corpse, which is subsequently consumed by the enormous serpent. Frantic, the girl shouts in fear at the dreadful sight she just observed. We observe the enormous snake consuming the captain as violet lightning streaks from its form. The antagonist gazes at the girl and states it's a pity because he wished to include her in his assortment. He desired to transform her into one of his samples to exhibit her like a prize. With his blood-smeared hand, he readies to assault the girl. The antagonist then puts his hand on her face as she weeps, utterly hopeless. In her last moments, the girl calls out for her brothers and sisters, questioning where they are. Abruptly, a massive lightning blade materializes and a voice declares they've come to rescue her. The betrayer pivots and succeeds in deflecting the strong assault with his arm. The hit generates a surge of yellow power, but the antagonist simply brushes it aside. The young lady gazes up in astonishment and shouts her sibling's name, Ye. Just then, RMC and his sibling arrive on the ground, prepared for combat. The girl identifies the MC's previous look and addresses him, brother. RMC informs his sister he'll clarify everything later, but at this moment, they've got larger issues to tackle. Meanwhile, the crimson-haired girl is merely observing him with this "what in the universe is occurring" expression on her face. Confronting the serpent, our protagonist understands the creature has developed by feasting on awakeners, something that's never been documented before. At the same moment, the antagonist appears to be escaping from something as this fierce yellow energy swirls around him. With a final effort, he releases all his strength at once, shattering whatever was restraining him in an instant. The villain then stares at them in disdain, inquiring if it isn't the young master and his petite maid. And just like that, the group of siblings confronts their adversary, prepared for the battle that's about to occur. The redhead inquires, completely bewildered, how they were aware of her and why they had the other young girl with them. But the villain just disregards her inquiry and begins scheming how he's going to manage this fresh circumstance. RMC then understands his foe isn't some dim-witted thug, but actually a rather clever individual. The man discloses his grand scheme: transform the maid into a soulless marionette and present RMC to his employer. We then witness the consequences of the antagonist's strength, having eliminated numerous hunters without compassion. Numerous arms crafted from crimson energy materialize floating above the vanquished hunters. Disclosed that the foe possesses a metal-type ability, enabling him to combine arms with his own physique. Our main character then examines their strength levels and recognizes the difference between them is just enormous. But then, a notion ignites in our protagonist's mind and his eyes shine. He faces his sisters and instructs them to pay attention and follow his guidance. On the opposite side, the opponent prepares to battle as an unusual energy emanates from him. The antagonist initiates a swift, rapid strike with his talons, directed straight at RMC. Noticing the threat, his sisters leap back and he readies to respond. He then triggers his celestial lightning type awakening, releasing a tremendous yellow energy. Our main character utilizes his ability to evade the antagonist's strikes at incredible velocity. The villain is stunned when he observes the boy's method, acknowledging it as an illicit maneuver. He then recalls that some time ago, he conquered someone who employed that precise same method. In his recollections, he remembers the confrontation against our hero's previous existence. Linking the points, he understands who the child is and begins chuckling at the crazy coincidence. However, our MC's offspring exhales body candle that much strength and starts to falter. Knowing he only has one opportunity, he shouts his sisters' names to initiate the actual scheme. The antagonist hears a commotion and turns his head toward the noise. In that instant, the crimson-haired sibling emerges, grasping a massive rock, prepared to smash the foe. Without a moment's hesitation, the girl throws the enormous stone directly at the antagonist. But the foe evades the strike effortlessly, and the rock fractures on the earth from the collision. He then observes a strange noise and a path of green energy traveling swiftly across the ground. The man instantly goes on high alert, noticing the energy approaching him, prepared for anything. Abruptly, a massive tempest of air and debris develops right in front of him. The individual responsible for this assault is the other sibling, utilizing her air power. Even within the tornado, the opponent is entirely unperturbed, stating these are merely inexpensive ploys. Taking advantage of the diversion, our hero concentrates his energy and forms a complete forceful lightning spear. Utilizing a celestial combat skill, he hurls the weapon with every bit of power his physique has remaining. The antagonist twirls around, astonished, and curses our host for being so clever as he prepares for the blow. The lightning javelin hits the villain directly in the head, seriously wounding him on contact. The assault is so forceful it penetrates the opponent and proceeds its course upward into the sky. The spear's power triggers a tremendous blast, leaving a path of devastation in the woods. Fatigued, our host collapses, and his sister promptly begins scolding him for employing such a careless tactic. With that, both girls observe him, extremely concerned about his state after he exerted himself so intensely. Even though he's hurt, the antagonist just grins and states as if it doesn't count because he's going to safeguard the young master from the two small girls. With an eerie smile, he uncovers a keen knife, prepared to go all in once more. Not wasting any time, he rushes toward the two girls at rapid speed to eliminate them. The maid shouts a caution and jumps in front of the raid leader to protect her from the foe's approaching strike. With a savage hit, he delivers a direct impact on the pale-haired girl with astonishing strength. The effect propels her soaring, and she ultimately crashes forcefully against a tree. The antagonist then glares at the other young woman and informs her not to fret. Her turn is approaching shortly. He transforms his hands into sharp blades and readies for his next ruthless assault. With his knives, he secures the young woman down and instructs her to be good lure for his schemes. But a yellow flash of lightning strikes in and redirects the assault, rescuing the girl at the very final moment. The foe then targets the protagonist, prepared to pierce him with his tiny knife. He clutches the weapon firmly and brings it down, completely intending to finish the boy right there. The blade then penetrates our MC's back, wounding him severely. The antagonist sends him soaring while the crimson-haired sibling observes in utter hopelessness. The girl then succeeds in breaking loose, seizes her wounded brother and makes a dash for it. The antagonist tightens his fist, questioning why our MC is in such a rush to encounter his creator. But our main character, cradled in his sister's embrace, responds that indeed the foe is the one on the verge of being defeated. With his eye oozing, the opponent is enraged at the little child's audacity. Abruptly, a silhouette emerges in the sky, shouting and summoning him in ungrateful canine for daring to assault his owner. This is our MC's grandparent, who is staring at him with eyes of sheer fury. The antagonist then realizes that the previous ostentatious assault was in fact a cue to capture the family's focus. Just grins, affirming the ingenious scheme he devised. Reminiscing a bit, the family reaches the battle's site, and the butler states the young master is missing. The dad complains that the child can already stroll, and the butler tells him that the maid has also disappeared. Angry, the leader of the household shouts at his men to rush and locate the two of them. Just then, they notice the path of illumination from our MC strike and know precisely where to head. The grandfather then utilizes his lightning ability and soars at maximum velocity toward the signal. Reaching the location, the grandfather promptly assesses the circumstance, and the antagonist begins to fret. He then believes his sole opportunity is to seize the protagonist to utilize as a hostage. He rushes at full velocity towards the siblings to attempt to seize them, but the crimson-haired sibling brandishes a staff and readies to retaliate, strike to defend her brother. She delivers a forceful strike on the foe, who completely wasn't anticipating that. The man is shocked by the girl's assault and stares at her with sheer anger. Suddenly, the protagonist's father arrives, enraged, and labels the villain ineffective for his shortcomings. He then assaults the antagonist, who attempts to escape, asserting none of it was his responsibility. However, the man finds himself trapped by one of the region's enormous creatures with nowhere left to. Without compassion, the beast assaults him simultaneously, providing him no opportunity to flee. Subsequently, the serpent starts to develop, changing into a powerful golden being. The steward hurriedly approaches the kids and states that our MC is fine, despite the injury he sustained. The grandfather commends the girls and states the serpent is now prepared for them to gather its precious bounty. And that's when it strikes him, the aristocratic families are utilizing civilians to nourish and develop these creatures. With that, the grandfather and his offspring get ready to confront the formidable golden being that has appeared. The confrontation between them then produces a massive detonation of crimson energy across the woodland. The conflict between them triggers a massive detonation of crimson energy that tears through the whole woodland. Out of the haze, two shapes appear as the children observe everything develop from a secure distance. Our champion then combines two and two. The aristocratic families are utilizing civilians to nourish and enhance these creatures. Right after Grandpa and Dad prepare to confront the formidable golden being that just emerged, he then states this yield was much better than what he was anticipating to receive that day. Grandpa instructs the butler to escort the two girls to gather the leftover supplies for the storage. In his mind, the old geezer is already plotting to combine the shabby items with junk to sell off to the typical Joe hunters. And for the premium products, he wants to raise the prices and make the frontline teams pay an arm and a leg. He then delivers the toxin pouch for his son to utilize and establish some significant new links. All the while, our fellow's father just observes with a cunning smile fixed on his face. Grandpa passes the silver serpent's horn to be delivered to the auction house. Regarding the scales, he states he's going to transform them into safeguarding treasures for his beloved grandson. Listening to all this, our main character is left with a puzzled expression on his face, entirely bewildered by their behavior. With that, the steward bows before his employer and consents to obey all of his commands. However, the children's father intervenes and requests his dad to surrender the Serpent King's essence. Grandpa complains, stating he has a wonderful spouse and that it would be preferable for her child to share with him. Just then, the main character's mother comes near while his siblings observe from the backdrop. Our protagonist's father is astonished by her presence and simply gazes, unable to respond. His demeanor then changes to fury and he clenches his teeth tightly. In his siblings' embrace, the protagonist glances back and gazes at the man with a very grave demeanor. Grandpa then throws the snake extract to the butler, who grabs it from the air with ease. Grasping the energy orb, the butler is astonished by the strength it's presently emitting. The leader of the household states his oldest son is developing and that this will be useful. Kneeling, the steward expresses gratitude for his kindness and vows everlasting everlasting allegiance to the family. A couple of days pass, and we observe the opulent Luklon estate beneath a starry night sky. In the chamber, our protagonist clutches a necklace while his sibling tells him that Shuang is now his servant. And just like that, the two siblings show up clad in tailored outfits and grin at him. He then gazes at the pendant, and a system notification informs him he's received to evaluate a protective item. Noticing his demeanor, one of the girls inquires with worry what is the matter with her sibling. Unexpectedly, the lad's eyes shine and he strikes the pendant with his electric ability. He's utilizing his lightning power to attempt and supercharge the pendant. Massive surge of yellow energy then erupts from his bedroom window. The two siblings gaze at our protagonist, utterly astonished by the exhibition of strength. Even with the electrical shock, the pendant stays entirely unblemished without a single mark. He reflects to himself that this small experiment validated that creatures develop if they diverge awakened ones. Our main character realizes that the aristocratic families utilize ordinary individuals as decoys for their plots. In this manner, they obtain their hands on potent assets and equipment that the feeble would never have entry to. But what they instruct at the academy is that the aristocrats jeopardize their lives to safeguard the defenseless. Recalling all this deceit, our main character becomes enraged and tightens his fists. The siblings then inquire if knowledge is truly that potent. He pivots and clarifies that he's just now beginning to comprehend how perilous a deficiency of information is. He then states that from this point forward, they must utilize the Liu family to collect more until. With a resolute expression, the two girls consent to pursue their younger brother's scheme. A moment, Hero inquires Shuang why she was with that celestial squad. She pauses to respond, and the other sister interjects that she wishes to understand why her own strength is so intense. The red-headed sister is left voiceless, and the other simply gazes at her intently. Then the main character inquires about the other sibling named Sanson, and the young lady stiffens. Upon listening to the other girl's name, the young woman is entirely in astonishment. With tears in her eyes, she attempts to clarify what occurred to Sanson. She then falls to the ground and starts to weep uncontrollably, unable to cease. At that, the main character covers her mouth and cautions her that you can't weep loudly there. After settling down, she sits on the bed, still very disturbed by the circumstance. She begins to clarify that on that day, Yi went out to search for their sibling and never returned. In a recollection, we observe a famished little Shuang gazing at a slice of cake. Her hand extends to seize the cherry atop the cake. She has a sorrowful expression on her face, anticipating her sibling's return. She then chooses to go search for her brother and Yi so they can arrive home earlier. So Shuang begins looking through the dim house, calling out Sanson's name. Frightened, she dashes down the dim corridor and requests her sister to cease fooling around. The boy is astonished to discover that Sanson fled from home. She clarifies that from the rooftop she observed that the creature concealment was caused by a wicked individual. Our protagonist inquires if the creature's concealment isn't meant to be an unmanageable environmental catastrophe. In her recollections, she was fervently seeking Sanson across the city's skylines. She was then attempting to open a door, pleading for the little one to escape from there swiftly. Just then, she glances to the side with an expression of sheer terror and concern. On the rooftop, she noticed an enigmatic man grasping a staff beneath the full moon. The man's visage was concealed in the darkness, but his eyes shone with a vivid crimson glow. He then lifted his staff, which started to shine with a potent energy. With that, he struck the staff on the earth, unleashing a tremendous surge of power. A massive crimson magic circle then appeared on the ground, brightening the whole region. The circle then emitted a ray of crimson light that rose toward the gloomy sky. The ray ripped a gap in the sky, forming a crimson portal. A massive reptilian eye emerged in the portal, and Shuang was completely frightened. A moment later, the enigmatic crimson portal merely appeared in the night sky, and from it surfaced several crimson demonic creatures prepared to unleash chaos on the city. With tears in her eyes, Shuang is utterly frightened just recalling that moment. In her recollections, she was entirely solitary and encircled by massive crimson fiendish creatures. From the gateway in the heavens, countless beings surged forth, assaulting everyone in view. She clarified she was being pursued by a demon wolf when a panel emerged. The system then informed her that she had roused a celestial force of body development. Following the system's instructions, she made an astonishing jump between two structures to flee. Back in the current time, she informs them she sprinted until she discovered the oppression squad that captured her. And our main character is astonished that another system has emerged and by all the wonders occurring to them. He states that if they all possess systems, Sanson might have one as well and could still be living. Our protagonist consents and states they will utilize the Liu family's connections to discover information about her. Unexpectedly, Shuang states she obtained an assignment from the system with a prize. Without any notice, she lifts her brother up in her arms, leaving him entirely astonished. He's frightened and ponders if that is going to occur to him again. The two siblings dash off eagerly because the system's objective is to provide their brother a wash once again. The two siblings are enthusiastically sprinting through the mansion with our host, who's shouting his lungs out about their quirky system. And just like that, they arrive at a huge opulent bathroom to commence the task they were assigned. The auburn-haired woman then raises our little fellow into the air, remarking on how adorable he is, while the other one completely concurs. His sibling continues the mocking, appearing to find the entire scenario quite amusing. This leaves our lad utterly humiliated, and he begins shouting his heart out from pure humiliation. Now in the tub, one of the sisters cleans his hair while the other observes him with a grin. The two of them appear to be having a great time splattering water everywhere during the young master's bathing period. After the bath, they keep him in remark on what a good little boy he was, but he protests that they've altered. Abruptly, the crimson-haired sibling halts abruptly in her path, a highly anxious look spreading across her visage. Noticing her response, our host anxiously inquires what occurred to make her appear like that. She then gestures with a frightened expression on her face, disclosing that the creature's concealment was caused by that individual. The main character and his other sibling are entirely stunned by the disclosure they just received. Elsewhere, we observe the steward strolling beside a man with a mark on his face. Focusing in, we obtain a clearer view of the man's visage, which has a very stern and menacing stare. In a recollection, the girl observes the identical man on a rooftop utilizing a staff to fashion the creature hide. In her recollection, the man forms a vast crimson magic circle that rips apart the sky. From this gateway, a massive reptilian eye emerges, leaving the girl completely frightened. So our host announces that he's the offspring of the upcoming family leader and advises them not to panic. With that, the trio of them proceed down the corridor while the two gentlemen stroll further ahead. Our host glares at them with a grave and doubtful expression as they go by. As they stroll by him, the crimson-haired sibling becomes very anxious and can't conceal her fright. The man with the mark observes the girl's response but doesn't utter a single word. Approaching nearer, the two siblings greet the steward with strained grins on their faces. The steward then inclines to our host, addressing him courteously as well, master. The main character observes the pair of them stroll away down the corridor with a very serious expression. They reach a door and the butler declares that Joe King has come back to visit the master of the residence. MC understands it's the conference room and chooses to overhear their discussion. His sibling becomes anxious and inquires if they won't be found out there, but he informs her not to fret, appearing to have a strategy in mind for this. With the strategy in progress, they creep nearer to the entrance. The main character then rushes into the chamber with his siblings, and a guard shouts that he cannot enter. Inside, his grandfather is seated at his desk with the two men, who gaze at the spectacle in astonishment. The siblings bow and express regret, fervently stating they couldn't restrain the MC. But the small fellow disregards all of it and dashes with his arms spread wide, calling for his grandpa. The leader of the household waves off the others and instructs his grandson to approach him with a grin. With our host on his lap, he discusses the family's strength and inquires about the new creature waves. The steward and the man with the mark pay close attention to the master's instructions. The man then informs that they have already discovered new packs of creatures and could strike at any instant. Hearing this, our young champion becomes enraged, realizing the academy is deceiving and sending students directly into a perilous area. In a recollection, we observe an educator stating that the tides are a natural calamity and that the awakened are guardians. The steward states he has already prepared plans for the guild to publish tasks with substantial rewards, enticing numerous teams. The grandfather commends the man, stating his family has assisted theirs for 3 generations and he is very satisfied with that. The steward then makes a motion to the man with the scar, who appears to grasp the message instantly. Without a moment's hesitation, the man kneels on the ground and states it's a privilege to serve the Liu family. The steward appreciates him for the present that assisted his son attain top rank and conveys his thankfulness for the master's generosity. The family leader grins and instructs them to continue with the creature tide strategy as they had planned. The man stays kneeling and acknowledges his master's command without hesitation. The grandfather also instructs them to arrange costly apparatus and amusement services for the survivors. Observe a recollection of a man who resembles a younger iteration of our MC's grandfather relaxing in a hot spring with multiple girls while a maid observes from afar. The steward bows before his employer and accepts all the provided commands without reluctance. Night descends and we observe the vast and opulent Liu family estate beneath the moonlight. Back in the chamber, our MC clarifies the family's strategy to his siblings to create portals and utilize individuals as lure. He states they utilize the awakened to combat the creatures, enabling them to collect loads of precious materials. His sibling is furious and inquires how they can be so heartless, questioning if those individuals aren't regarded as human. Our MC then clarifies that to the aristocrats they are the sole humans and everyone else is merely livestock. The crimson-haired sibling proposes, informing everyone about the scheme, but our young man interrupts her. He states that even if they speak the truth, nobody will trust them. This leaves the pair of them anxious, and they inquire their sibling what they ought to do now. Our MC then announces that they are going to eliminate the Liu family's thugs and halt the monster surge. He then beckons his two siblings nearer to him to clarify the strategy. The two girls bend closer to listen to what he has to express. Murmuring, he reveals to them his strategy, and they pay attention with complete focus. The lad inquires if they comprehended everything, and the pair of them nod in affirmation. But they're still concerned, inquiring if they can truly conquer such a powerful foe. Our MC states they have 3 weeks to get ready since the plan commences at the end of the month. He raises his baby bottle and states they need to energize, but his sister is completely puzzled about how. In that instant, our youthful champion and his pale locks exchanged a familiar look. Without hesitating, he places the baby bottle in the other sister's mouth, who is caught off guard. She consumes the milk and is astonished to sense her strength soaring without even practicing. Our MC then dashes off, saying he's going to grab a snack while they complete the milk. The MC's mom is contemplating calmly when she's abruptly disturbed by her child. She then grumbles that his hunger just keeps increasing, labeling him a little rascal for never being content. 3 weeks later, our MC ponders if he's reached his threshold while gazing at a system display. The system notifies him about a new ability, and he ponders if he can be crabborn into a host. He contemplates if he can return to his present condition without having to, spend another 9 months in the uterus. Moreover, our young man understands he can utilize his new ability as an assault method. An example demonstrates how his new technique can be employed to directly confront his foes. Just then, his siblings burst through the door, enthusiastically saying that everything is all arranged. Assembled in the chamber, the 3 siblings commence to deliberate their strategy to halt the advancing foes. In another moment, the white-haired sibling murmurs that she's already uncovered everything on the individual named Joe Chu. She discloses that he's a celestial enlightenment expert and one of the leading alumni from his academy cohort. Then another servant informs them to lower their voices, cautioning them about the threat that man poses. Back in the siblings gathering, the crimson-haired sister interjects, stating she's also discovered some significant information on him. Evidently, the Lord bestowed upon him a superior life essence, propelling him to the summit of B rank. Hearing this, the youngest sibling understands he's far more powerful than the previous foe they confront together. The host then evaluates his own strength, noting that he's only just attained the preliminary level of C rank. He states that Shuang reached the summit of D rank in 3 weeks, but even combined they still don't have a possibility. But the auburn-haired girl brightens up, informing them not to fret because she acquired a new ability after providing him a wash. Both siblings get extremely thrilled and inquire what type of ability she succeeded in awakening. With a self-satisfied smile, the girl states her new method has a truly awesome and grand name. She then strikes a stance and shouts that the ability's title is Blue Thirsty Rush. Haired sister is amazed by the title, while the MC appears a bit ashamed. Assuredly, she clarifies that the method renders her 5 times more powerful for 30 seconds. She boasts that with her newfound strength, 1 strike will be sufficient to propel the foe across the other side of the globe. Energized, she begins shadowboxing while her other sibling applauds excitedly. The host flashes a self-assured grin. He already has a notion for the strategy, but he can't help but ponder why the system granted them such incredible abilities just for washing him. Still, he's concerned because their strength might not be sufficient to overcome the foe. Noticing her siblings' worry, the redhead inquires what type of details he was able to collect for the strategy. The host then displays a very arrogant smile before uncovering his major secret. He states his information is vital and that he found out the adversary will be engaged in the city at 1 in the morning. We then observe that the host overheard the individual with the scar informing his grandfather that everything is prepared for his 1 a.m. assault. Upon listening to this, the red-haired sibling is entirely stunned by the disclosure. She begins to fret, stating that's precisely where her spiritual awakening group's headquarters is situated. She then shouts that the leader is in peril and rushes to alert the others about the assault. But our youthful champion halts her by seizing her arm and employing a bit of his electric energy to restrain her. He then advises her not to be so rash, as they still have time to respond and rescue everyone. With a resolute expression, he declares that he already possesses a strategy to conquer Zhou Kaiyan. Both sisters get extremely thrilled, inquiring if he truly has a scheme already. Our youthful protagonist then leans in and begins murmuring the specifics of his concealed tactic. He states with assurance that they have more than sufficient time and that tonight they will bring down on Jokayan. Both siblings, not in accord, prepared for the mission. Night descends upon the city, and a complete moon illuminates the setting for the mission that's about to commence. The timepiece on the wall chimes midnight, signaling that the moment for the surprise attack is approaching. Clad in dark attire and masks, the three siblings get ready to commence the operation. Somebody states that the foe possesses a formidable ability known as Divine Whip. This method enables him to convert his arms into lashes, merging it with his physique augmentation. With this ability, he's able to break even the strongest metal armor. Our group of champions then jumps from a rooftop, commencing their nighttime entry. They glide through the nighttime sky with the full moon in the backdrop. Dropping toward a structure, one of them announces that they discovered a signal and that the objective is there. The white-haired sibling appreciates her companions from the pomegranate group for rescuing them some time. Gazing down, they notice the structure where a beam is glowing, signaling the foe's position. Hurrying along the edge of the structure, the trio quietly nears their objective. They then crouch behind a wall and watch the foe from afar. On the rooftop, the man wields a staff that radiates with a crimson energy. One of the siblings prepares to strike, but the MC halts her, advising her to remain composed and wait. The antagonist then starts to focus a tremendous amount of strength into his staff. As he does, crimson lightning sparks from the weapon as he readies to release all its energy. Noticing the ideal chance, the MC shouts for his siblings to strike now. With that, the redhead strikes the ground, tearing out a massive piece of concrete from the floor. She throws the slab with all her strength toward their adversary. The man effortlessly evades the assault, but the stone still brushes his face. The effect of the strike leaves him dazed for a short instant. Angry about unexpected assault, he yells, inquiring who has the audacity to hit him. He stares at the gap the missile created in the wall behind him. At that instant, the other sibling seizes the diversion to grab the foe's staff. Understanding what occurred, the antagonist spins around enraged and readies to strike the girl. The antagonist then employs his celestial whip skill, hitting with his altered arm. The extended appendage propels toward the girl at rapid velocity, but she employs her leg to deflect the strike and the staff to leap away from him. With that, the sister tosses the weapon away from the foe with all her might. The opponent pivots and observes the staff soaring through the atmosphere. The antagonist employs his celestial whip skill to attempt and recover his weapon. Abruptly, a yellow flash of lightning emerges, racing toward the antagonist with tremendous force. The man freaks out, realizing it's too late to flee the assault. Then the lightning strikes a direct blow, causing a huge blast of energy. Observing the outcome, the host informs his sibling that they achieved a clear strike on him. But the foe arises from the haze, his arm entirely burned, and yells at them in fury. The host and his sibling are utterly astonished to witness that he endured the assault. The antagonist warns them, stating he'll cause them to lament the day they came into existence. Without delaying a moment, the opponent springs toward the trio, prepared for a battle. Our youthful champion then glides back and shouts for his siblings to transition to Plan B. Grasping the foe's armament, the silver-haired sibling prepares herself for the subsequent action. She then twirls the staff with tremendous power, getting ready for the next segment of the strategy. At that instant, she hurls the staff toward her sibling. The host catches the crew just as the crimson-haired and the antagonist confront each other, unleashing their battle auras. The siblings leap straight into the conflict to save the crimson-haired huntress, who was in significant danger with a group of creatures. The girl begins to equal the man's power, going toe-to-toe with him. He's astonished by the girl's strength and questions who these children are to be so powerful at such a tender age. However, Kwang isn't disturbed in the slightest. Just then, our primary character pulls out the Crimson Scepter and prepares a truly potent skill. Then the small fellow conjures a gigantic flash of lightning from the skies, crackling with destructive and overpowering power. The betrayer is completely unaware of what's occurring and questions what in the universe that strange ability is. With that, a crimson portal tears open in the sky and fiendish claws begin extending out from. The lad notices the threat and yells for all to evacuate the area at once before it's too late. Kwang then demonstrates the girl, sending her toppling to the earth. Right after our protagonist tosses a baby bottle, propelling it soaring directly at the henchman. The guy obstructs the bottle, but it shatters on contact, completely soaking him in milk. Kwang is just perplexed, trying to comprehend why he was just assaulted with a baby bottle. A crimson creature emerges, and the antagonist chuckles, stating they assisted him in completing his task like a group of fools. But up in the heavens, a yellow illumination starts to shine, and the betrayer gazes up fascinated. Suddenly, a ray of golden power darts by and hits the creature that had just bitten Kwang, but he effortlessly tosses the creature aside. Kwang states that since they assisted him in finishing his task, he'll be on his journey. Just then, the man understands he stepped directly into a snare as azure energy arrows begin soaring toward him. A group of crimson wolves also rushes in his direction. The betrayer then mocks, asking if they truly believe this is sufficient to halt him. With that, the wolves leap at him while he's occupied evading the energy arrows. Our primary character just remains there observing as the henchman approaches for a direct assault. The two girls gaze on anxious. Kwang rushes ahead at rapid pace to strike our boy with the wolves close behind him. Above our lad, the foe chuckles and states the child can't deceive him with such a pitiful ruse. Kwang had guided the group straight towards our boy. The girls shout in anguish for their sibling who's about to be attacked by the creatures. But our champion yells for them not to approach any nearer and to keep away from the battle. The antagonist is fascinated when he listens to the lad's voice pondering where he's encountered it previously. At that, he pivots to gaze at the small fellow attempting to identify that recognizable voice. The betrayer is completely astonished when he ultimately identifies the protagonist's voice. And just like that, the wolves disregard the boy and jump directly for Kwang. Kwang yells, inquiring why the wolves are solely pursuing him and not the child as well. Kwang then conjures a violet energy barrier to protect himself and retaliate against the wolves. The wolves assault and he protects himself. However, there are simply too numerous of them and matters become increasingly intricate until the creatures ultimately brought him down. The tiny primary character retrieves his staff from the earth. The crimson lightning in the atmosphere disappears, and on the earth all that's left are the remnants of Kwang for the wolves to tidy up. The siblings rush over anxious, calling out to our lad who is utterly fatigued. At that instant, the group of crimson wolves directs its focus to our lad. The two girls instantly leap in front of the little fellow to shield him. They instruct their sibling to leave the remainder to them. The sibling in crimson yells, enthusiastically calling out for the assistant captain who has just come to assist. From above, a woman with violet hair descends with her crew prepared for battle. Our lad states with ease that the task is finished and they can at last return home. The following day, at an opulent estate, someone is yelling their lungs out. Grandpa is on his feet seething while another man is kneeling. The attendant is in tears pleading with our boy's grandfather for pardon, stating they fell short in their responsibilities. The manager shouts that Zhou Qing destroyed everything at a crucial moment, making him even more enraged. The steward requests the owner to relax, stating he will look into everything and offer a clarification. With a shaking hand, the older man appears to ease a bit, but he's still extremely annoyed. The master states the Liu family will retaliate for his son's demise and that he will not pardon the betrayer. The attendant expresses gratitude to the employer and assures he will do everything to discover who is responsible for the assault. Just then, a lady opens the door and calls for the steward, who is still kneeling on the ground. Our son's mother expresses that the infant is more famished than previously and that she had intentions to go shopping. Grandpa chuckles and states it's typical for him to consume more since he's a developing lad. He persists in stating the little boy is the optimism for both families' destinies. Grandpa then states that a couple of families have requested to organize a marriage for the child. The mother is astonished, pondering how her son is already so well liked by the other families. Grandpa clarifies that the boy's standing has circulated and that he must address this issue as soon as feasible. The primary character is astonished, pondering what type of strange wedding plot this is. The two girls eavesdrop on the discussion and are shocked by the announcement of their brother's betrothal. Our small boy shuts his eyes and nods, affirming that what they listened to is accurate. The siblings don't appear too pleased about the announcement of him getting engaged. The silver-haired girl inquires if he's going to wed the offspring of those villains. Our lad grins and states he'd never forsake them and that he doesn't desire those pampered kids nearby anyway. The girls grin, relieved and joyful to hear his assurance. Outside, aristocratic families arrive at the mansion bringing presents for the engagement. The steward arranges the preparations, issuing commands to guarantee everything is flawless for the occasion. The primary character's mother expresses dissatisfaction to Grandpa, stating the steward could have managed everything alone. The chief grandpa states his own ineffective son can't handle these matters, so she must acquire the skills to be the matriarch. At that instant, a servant rushes down the corridor towards the steward. The young lady advances toward the attendant and murmurs in his ear. The steward hurriedly approaches his grandfather, who is sitting. The attendant then leans in and murmurs in the employer's ear about what he just discovered. Grandpa's demeanor shifts to serious and contemplative. He then rises and invites his daughter-in-law to enter and participate in the engagement meeting. The lady strides in carrying our child in her embrace. The steward declares that a sealed message from the second young master has come directly from the imperial capital. With a grave expression on his face, the MC's grandfather receives the correspondence. He then gives the letter to our protagonist's mother, who's cradling him in her lap. Our protagonist reflects that sealed messages are how aristocratic families convey significant information. He then extends his hand for the letter, producing small infant sounds. He perceives that the higher-ups want to take action against against the Ling family, but our little fellow couldn't care less. He leaps toward his mom, prepared for more milk. She scolds him, instructing him to consume more gradually as she embraces him firmly. The senior disregards the situation and inquires with his daughter-in-law for her opinion on the letter's details. She ponders why the higher-ups are abruptly intrigued by the Ling family, particularly since they're already on the downturn. The family leader just grins, stating they erred, and now their enterprises are ready for the taking. He then commands that the Ling family's wedding proposal gathering is not to come back. We observe our young man handing his bottle to his red-haired sister. Just then, his additional sister rushes into the room, shouting for both of them. Surprised, the bottle goes soaring, splattering milk all over the red-haired sibling. He swiftly places the bottle into his other sister's mouth. He then inquires why she is so agitated and advises her to consume some milk to recuperate. The sibling sips with a content expression on her face. She then gives the bottle back to her sibling, stating she spotted Sanson. The main character is astonished and inquires where she is. The sibling responds that she's at the Ling family's engagement celebration. Then, in a recollection, the elder sister who was attending at the occasion observes that the Ling family has just shown up. She sees their carriage approaching, and one of the girls prepares to assist. Young Sanson is inside the coach wearing a maid's outfit. The main character is astonished when he hears the Ling family's name. Noticing their sibling's response, the two girls inquire him what's incorrect. Our protagonist furiously states that the Lu family is going to demolish the Ling family. He desperately shouts at them to discover a method to get Sanson out of there. He attempts to make a dash for it, but his mother unexpectedly shows up and obstructs his way. With a serious demeanor, his mother inquires where he believes he's headed to once more. His mother collects him, stating he can't escape because his grandfather instructed him to be taken to the gathering. With that, she takes him away while his sisters observe, very concerned. The auburn-haired girl inquires what they ought to do, and the pale-haired sibling replies they must devise a strategy first. At that instant, another servant appears and requests the two of them to assist the butler with the preparations. The two young ladies consent, even though they're still on alert. In the corridor, the grandfather expresses gratitude to the families and declares that only 3 young women are suitable for his grandson. The 3 family delegates bow, privileged by the chance for a union. The elder declares that talent is crucial and the victor of a unique examination will wed the boy. Our protagonist is perplexed, having no clue what this ability assessment is all regarding. We then observe the 3 households selected for the examination: Nangong and the Ling family. The grandfather complains that the Ling family dispatched a concubine's offspring to the event. With rage in his eyes, he believes that he merely permitted it to distract their focus. The main character becomes nervous, believing he can solely rely on his 2 siblings now. He then buries his face into his mother, which truly irritates her. She shouts at him, but our young man just believes he's sipping some milk to soothe himself. The grandfather chuckles, advising her to allow him to drink more since his growth is atypical. He states that when the MC matures and is evaluated in the capital, she'll receive all the recognition. Fatigued, the mother grumbles that he's a somewhat endless mischief maker who only understands how to consume. In another place, the steward enters a chamber where the leader of the household is seated by himself. The attendant then notifies him that the Ling girl will perish in the examination and their whole group will be eradicated. With a content expression, the family head states the strategy is merely outstanding. Overhearing the malevolent scheme, our protagonist enters a complete frenzy, contemplating his sister Sanson. Min white-haired sibling is sprinting through the mansion's corridor with a platter of fruit. Headed sibling is also rushing, grumbling that she's too occupied and has no means to escape, and thus, the 2 siblings hurry through the corridor, fulfilling their responsibilities. They then gaze at one another, highly concerned, pondering what they're going to do next. The scene then transitions to the Lu family's exclusive arena, which resembles a gigantic coliseum. The grandfather, the mother cradling our young man, and the butler are all positioned in a private box, observing everything. The steward then proclaims that the examination is about to commence and summons the young woman from the Nangong family. From their positions, they observe as the initial competitor enters the vast arena. We observe the young woman from the Nangong family in her gothic attire at the arena's entrance. The main character's grandfather compliments the rival, stating she is attractive and talented in fighting. However, our protagonist's mother doesn't appear impressed by the girl's looks at all. The elder states that not every noble maiden matures to be a treasure like her. She concurs, adding that a daughter-in-law should be someone who can share their responsibilities in the future. The steward then summons the second young woman from the E family to appear in the arena. At that instant, a hand rises and a voice enthusiastically responds to the summons. Immediately after, a blonde girl in a modest dress runs eagerly to the center of the arena. She then advances toward the other contender with a broad grin grin on her face. She curtsies to the family and officially presents herself as Yi Zhuangshuan. Noticing this, the main character's mother comments that the young woman definitely understands how to perform the role to gain approval. The steward then proclaims the third daughter from the Ling family named Ling Piapiao. A girl with brief hair and plain attire starts to stroll toward the arena. She peacefully walks into the space, appearing quite distinct from the other two rivals. With that, the three competitors are finally assembled in the magnificent battle arena. Our protagonist's grandfather and mother observe the three girls with solemn faces. Our protagonist ponders if this is the individual Sanson was accompanied by and how she concluded up here. In the stadium, the three young ladies confront one another, prepared to start the proficiency assessment. The brief-haired girl then captures the other two's focus with a straightforward E. In reply, the blonde girl gestures at her furiously, inquiring if that's any manner for a noblewoman to behave. Suspended upside down, our MC appears quite anxious about this entire strange circumstance. Then we observe the short-haired girl grasping him by the foot, as if it's no big matter. With a grin, she refers to him as hubby and states she'll be under his supervision from now on. Our guy freaks out and shouts at her to set him down immediately. At that instant, his three siblings appear, yelling for the girl to release our MC. The three siblings indicate the girl, their expressions brimming with sheer fury. The youngest sibling then happily shouts her brother's name, along with the other two. Observing all this, our main character ponders how matters became so chaotic. Rewinding a few hours, we observe the Liu family venue where the proficiency assessment was occurring. There, the violet-haired girl confronts a fiendish boar that's rushing at her full speed. The young lady then prepares her blade, which starts to shine. She clutches the handle of the weapon firmly, getting ready to hit the creature in front of her. With a solitary slash, the girl effortlessly divides the monster neatly in half. Following the conflict, she remains in the arena with the remnants of the creature behind her. The grandfather then comments that she's quite talented, particularly since she hasn't experienced a divine revelation and is merely utilizing the family blade. Our guy contemplates the girl's resilience and how she's battling against an arranged marriage. With that, the second round commences and the delegate from the E family enters the arena. The blonde girl now confronts a fiendish nuisance that's even more frightening than the previous one. With malevolent smile and radiant eyes, she instructs the creature to move to a superior location. Her strength directly assaults the creature's mind with an unusual pink energy. The creature becomes bewildered by the assault and begins sprinting in circles around the stadium. Swayed by the strength, the creature dashes untamed away from the blonde rival, concludes by crashing full force into the arena wall with immense strength. The collision is so savage that the creature is eliminated instantly. The creature's form then rests motionless on the arena ground. Our protagonist and his siblings observe the entire event utterly astonished by the girl's strength. The rival then gestures to the audience and declares that she's overcome the challenge. The host's mother then inquires of the steward what that unusual ability was. He clarifies that it's her family's spiritual enlightenment, a form of cognitive disruption. This concerns the woman who believes the girl will control the entire family in the future. The grandfather states it's no issue as long as a celestial enlightenment is of a superior degree. Our protagonist reflects on how his mother's milk enhances his strength and ponders the mysteries these esteemed families are concealing. Soon after, the following contender from the Ling family is revealed and steps into the arena. The violet-haired girl observes the new rival enter the arena with a stern demeanor. The blonde girl mocks her adversary, claiming the Ling family must have been digging deep into the barrel. At this, the MC's mother becomes furious and labels the blonde contestant a disrespectful little brat. The small fellow's siblings become quite anxious when they notice who is with the Ling family. They observe from above anxious looks on their faces. Then we observe that their youngest sibling is attired as a servant among the Ling group. The main character panics because he realizes if the Ling rival falters, his sister will go down with her. The short-haired girl now confronts a massive demonic boar in the battle arena. Our young man is astonished and questions if merely remaining there is all she's going to do. The grandfather and the steward exchange playful looks, appearing as though they've got a wicked scheme in mind. The enormous creature readies to assault the girl while the family observes from their opulent suite. Our guy's mother gets frightened realizing the scheme was for the monster to eliminate the rival. The grandfather clarifies that to remove a target, you must make the rivalry appear as an accident. With that, he indicates the arena, instructing his daughter-in-law to simply observe what occurs. The creature rushes at full velocity in the girl's direction, but she stays entirely motionless. Then, with a self-satisfied grin, the rival ponders if that's all the creature has to offer. The fiend jumps to strike, but she summons a blue protective spell to thwart the onslaught, halting the creature's strike with merely one finger. At that instant, she utilizes her her strength and delivers a blow with a blue glow directly on the creature. The girl gazes at the creature with an expression brimming with resolve. The being then bellows in agony as a blazing energy begins streaming out of its form. The beast is entirely consumed by fire as the rival retreats. The grandfather and the steward are astonished by the spectacle they just observed in the arena. The creature begins to shine and transforms into a marine, foul mutant hog. Monarch. The grandfather appears to comprehend the circumstance while the remainder of the family merely observes. The blonde contestant chuckles, pleased that with the creature's transformation, she has one fewer opponent. But the violet-haired girl appears contemplative, watching everything with a very solemn expression. Observing the circumstance, our main character and his siblings are in complete turmoil. Our champion believes that to prevent being found out, he'll need to employ his hidden technique. With that, he begins drawing nourishment from his mother, who grumbles about his awful timing. Immediately after he expels all the milk he had just consumed, angry, his mom shoves him aside and shouts at him for drooling all over her once more. The fluid soars across the stadium and grabs the focus of the creature down below. The being then detects the aroma and instantly becomes intrigued by it. That the enormous hog charges towards the woman, encircled by a pink aura. His mother is utterly astonished with no clue what's occurring again. She prepares to throw the MC and the two siblings get ready to battle the looming creature. But the slender girl says to entrust it to her as an unusual force manifests in her hand. Utilizing her ability, she conjures several spikes that erupt from the earth at rapid velocity. The spikes then encircle the boar's body, entirely restraining it. The grandfather and the steward observe it all with astonished looks on their faces. The mother is also astonished and ponders what type of timber, foundation sacred enlightenment that is. The grandfather states that it's fascinating, but still not as excellent as his grandson's, though he recognizes the girl's strength. The youthful contender then gazes at her hand, now adorned with crimson thorns, and ponders what this strength is named. The violet-haired girl also appears astonished to witness her rival's capability. As for the blonde contender, she's repulsed and states there's no chance she'd desire to be enveloped in that. The grandfather clarifies that this skill can defeat superior rank beings by siphoning their essence. The energy siphons all the vitality from the boar, transforming it into a skeleton. The steward inquires what to do with her, but the leader of the household states he has a superior suggestion. He then gazes at his grandson, who is in his mother's embrace with his two siblings. His scheme is to make the girl his grandson's fiancée to obtain his hands on the Ling family's fortune. Her younger sibling yells for her to release our protagonist. Haired's sibling inquires of the youngest how she found herself with the huntress. Sanson appears as though she's on the verge of weeping and is unable to respond. Due to this, the redhead begins to admonish the little one for vanishing. The small one senses the gentle touch she received from her elder sister. Our main character then interrupts them, stating that now is not the moment, that the redhead's Ling clan is about to be entirely eradicated. The huntress responds with a grin, stating she already understood. That our lad and his siblings are astonished. The young woman from the Tang family states she doesn't possess much time and must inform them of something significant. They all pay attention closely. She inquires if they've already roused their systems. The main character and his siblings are paralyzed by the inquiry, but they all shake their heads, affirming. She clarifies that they must have acquired unusual powers and capabilities. His prospective spouse grins and inquires if they truly have faith in wonders. In an adorable manner, they all nod their heads no. The future spouse embraces little Sanson and states that every wonder arrives with a dreadful cost. The Treolings is in disbelief. Little Sanson cuddles into the huntress' lap. Our primary character then inquires what she signifies. The young lady discloses that the small girl lost her cherished siblings and was left entirely alone. In an instant, small Sanson observes her siblings being removed. All by herself, she realizes that her celestial awakening was the strength to take abilities. With this, she could capture the celestial enlightenment and abilities of other individuals. And thus, in this tumultuous world, she turned into a villain dreaded by all. But in the conclusion, she discovered a method to return to the past, relinquishing all her strength, just to come back and rescue the individuals she cherished most. MC is astonished and inquires if little Sanson was truly reincarnated. The tiny girl just nods timidly. The huntress chuckles and states the little girl is a merciless fiend. Sanson, in her previous existence as a formidable antagonist, was dreaded by. The youthful spouse states that the system interface is a cognitive projection from Sanson. The three siblings gaze at their system displays, attempting to comprehend. She persists, clarifying that each time they utilize the system, it depletes Sanson's energy. As she states this, a seated small Sanson emits an aura. The celestial awakening capabilities bestowed upon them are are the outcome of her investigation. In her previous existence, she underwent nearly lethal celestial awakenings to attain this. Our champion then inquires about his celestial awakening and how she obtained. The young lady clarifies that Sanson relinquished her strength to rescue him from peril. To accomplish that, she penetrated the capital's inner circle and vanquished the leader of the Mu family. She had to struggle and endure numerous difficulties to acquire that strength. With this discovery, they all rush over to Sanson. They all draw little Sanson into a collective embrace. All gathered together, they become sentimental in a lovely, tender scene. Little Sanson weeps with joy to be with her siblings once more. We observe a shabby-looking bar as an odd melody plays. Inside the establishment, there's a blonde girl performing on a pole. Just then, a fair-haired guy appears and attempts to flirt with her. The girl with heterochromia expresses gratitude to the guy, addressing him as Oni. Unexpectedly, the woman lifts her leg close to the blonde guy's face. Without a moment's hesitation, the guy inhales her foot, believing it's incredible. Immediately after, a green-haired fellow approaches and inquires if Blondie has lost his sanity. He then becomes earnest and recognizes something is amiss with him. At that instant, the man begins to feel lightheaded. The pair then discloses their genuine motives with a wicked grin. The fair-haired guy pleads with them not to take any action against him. In a cellar, we observe Blondie bound while the lady from before tortures him. Them imposes a daunting stance and grins at the bound-up guy. Enigmatic steward emerges and states he'd better reveal everything without concealing any specifics. The steward assumes a daunting expression. The fair-haired man begs for his existence and clarifies that his task was to halt a surge of creatures. The elderly man instructs him to continue speaking. The man states that after conquering the creatures, he received some cash. The elderly man becomes enraged and states he shouldn't have interfered with his son. Desperate, the blonde man claims it wasn't him, that it was 3 masked individuals. The elderly man becomes inquisitive and inquires who they were, where they originated from, and what their names were. The fellow states he doesn't know because he was distant and only observed 2 girls and a youngster. The elderly man is astonished to learn it was 2 females and a youngster. He then inquires what squad the guy is on and who his leader is. The elderly gentleman in the suit is surprised to learn he's a member of the Red Pomegranate Squad. With this knowledge, he recalls a gateway with extremely strong beings. The man then pivots and informs the woman from earlier to look after the fellow. The inmate shouts in anguish, claiming he violated his vow to release him. Ruthlessly, the blonde guy gets hit in the face with a platform shoe. The lady then maintains her foot on his visage. The elderly man states he vowed not to harass him, but he had to set a precedent out of him. He pivots and exits the basement. In a moment, he materializes on the roof of a structure in the midst of the night. The individual strolls over the rooftop. He gazes downward, noticing some fissures on the surface. The elderly man hobbles down and begins examining the fissures. He glides his hand over the area. Abruptly, the earth begins to radiate with an unusual energy. He moves to another section of the structure to investigate it. After examining it, he arrives at a conclusion. We observe a recollection of him grasping the protagonist's younger sibling while she was hurt. He then believes that this is significant and he must validate his hypothesis. The setting brings us back to the pub with the neon display. Inside, a blonde woman is performing a rather alluring dance for the patrons. A green-haired fellow strolls into a chamber and greets our protagonist's steward, referring to him as Lord. The steward, who was sipping something hot, inquires if the young man has discovered any new details. With that, the man displays a picture and states it was quite challenging following his objective. He discloses the objective was some D-rank loser who resided with 3 siblings and passed away 6 months ago. In a close-up, we observe the picture of our protagonist in his previous life appearing joyful with the 3 girls. The Lord gazes at the picture and verifies that all of it occurred 6 months ago. He then remembers that this was approximately the moment the MC's mother and father went to pursue the Liu family's creature. We then observe numerous pictures from the operation that led to our hero's demise and the rise of a creature. The steward then recalls the 2 females who safeguarded our young man and the fortune he succeeded in obtaining. Back in the current time, the green-haired individual obtains a vividly shining blue sphere of energy. He presents the item to his supervisor and expresses gratitude for the prize he obtained. The steward then departs and, with a grave expression, pledges to retaliate for his son. Subsequently, the scene shifts to an infant bottle filled with milk on a table. In the chamber, one of the siblings inquires what's the matter with our young fellow who is seated there gazing at the infant bottle. The sibling gazes at him with a highly focused demeanor. The MC ponders why ordinary individuals only attain the summit of B rank while aristocrats can surpass it. His sibling kneels down and clarifies that the human boundary truly is B rank and that the system was established by the aristocratic families. She then discloses that the objective was to fabricate the semblance that they are dominant and are destined to govern over everyone. The pair are astonished by the disclosure, and she states she discovered this in her previous existence. In a recollection, we observe that the young girl was a formidable antagonist and that the households in the capital are aware of the secret to attaining S rank. She persists in clarifying that the 8 powerful clans that dominate everything are concealing mysteries to an even greater advancement. Our champion is astonished and inquired what lies beyond S rank. The girl furiously responds that she doesn't understand and that they utilize the awakened like human energy sources to supply their own energy. She then states she wished to annihilate the world but discovered a method to rescue her brother and returned with the huntress. The host takes her hands and assures that he'll never abandon her alone again. With that, his sibling states that she and the others will battle alongside him. She grins with tears in her gaze as our champion consoles her. But abruptly, our protagonist Fianti kicks the door open and states their adorable little moment is about to be disrupted by a significant crisis. Our lad and his sibling are surprised by the disruption and ponder what occurred. The Fianti clarifies that the elderly steward from the Liu family just delivered someone. Upon hearing this news, the two siblings gaze at one another very worried. She then discloses with a grin that the butler bra guy who asserts to be the MC's mother's childhood companion. Our young fellow then inquires what that data has to do with a dilemma. His Fianti responds that the steward accompanying a companion of Lady Liu is something very suspicious. Elsewhere, we observe the Fianti being instructed by a servant who states she must acquire proper manners. The serious-appearing worker tells her they will commence her training with stance. But the Fianti appears quite uninterested and responds without much excitement that she understands. The servant then reprimands her for placing her hands in her pockets since that's contrary to the household regulations. Irritated, she inquires who the heck the worker believes she is to handle her like that. The servant boasts that she's an acquaintance of Lady Liu's while in the backdrop, guards are pulling a young man away. In a close-up, we observe the silver-haired man yelling in fury as he's being taken away by security. The servant states diversions like this are typical and that nothing is more crucial than the involvement. Weary of it all, the Fianti merely exhales and responds that she received the notification. With that, the Fianti subtly tosses a tiny crimson item from her hand. The item then soars at rapid velocity toward the individual being pulled away. The object adheres to the neckline of his shirt. Instantly after, a tiny white bloom emerges from the item, transforming into a hearing apparatus. The Fianti grins as a matching blossom emerges on her ear for her to hear in. Through the blossom, she hears the man swearing at the servant and insisting to know who dispatched him. After her surveillance period, the Fianti returns to the chamber and confronts the two siblings. Our champion grins and inquires if the ghostly bloodvine can likewise be utilized for surveillance. A grin, she states that she and Sanzan were a renowned assassin pair. The main character's sibling then inquires what details she succeeded in obtain. She then inquires if the man is his mother's partner and if she had numerous relationships. Our lad has a very astonished look upon hearing the inquiry. He then verifies it, recalling that he observed her with her partner even when he was merely a fetus. The young man remembers that later she would consistently bring him out just to encounter the guy. We observe his mother strolling with our protagonist in her embrace, scanning the surroundings carefully. In his recollection, he sees his mother being drawn into a changing room by this man. The man embraces her and she grumbles that the child won't cease consuming and is just so much effort. Immediately after that, the two begin to become very close. Meanwhile, our protagonist, who was in her embrace, has an extremely uncomfortable expression on his face. The situation becomes even more intense and our guy can only perspire profusely from the discomfort. Back in the current time, his Fianti states this is typical and that his father has partners too. The main character then ponders why the steward would confine the man if this is so typical. Confronted with this inquiry, his sibling also becomes quite contemplative about the entire circumstance. She then gazes at our young man's Fianti, anticipating a solution to the enigma. The sibling states that perhaps the Liu family doubts he isn't their genuine son. His Fianti concurs and states it's highly probable as there would be no other motive to bring him. And with this disclosure, our protagonist folds his arms with a truly irritated expression on his face. But a moment later, he bursts into a very assured grin for the girls. He then informs his sister not to fret because he possesses her reincarnation skill. His sister gazes at him astonished, her face reddening at his assurance. The sister then grins and nods, consenting to his evaluation. But at that instant, the bedroom door abruptly swings open, disrupting the trio's discussion. That individual emits a very loud scream as the three of them glance at the door in astonishment. Suddenly, the door crashes open, and one of the sisters dashes in, stating Master Liu summoned summoned him. Our champion's fiancé grins in remarks that they ultimately reach to manage the situation. Perplexed, the white-haired sibling inquires who has come and what the other girl is discussing. At that, fiancé approaches and murmurs something in our host's sister's ear, leaving her utterly astonished. The sibling then becomes concerned and inquires if anyone is attempting to harm her brother. The main character then clarifies that the man circulated gossip about having a relationship with his mother. His fiancé states that the Liu family regarded the butler's sibling like a foster son and they value their reputation greatly. But Sister Yi is still quite anxious, stating that these elite families are deceitful. The fiancé reassures her, stating that they are present and the little master isn't solitary. Our small champion informs everyone to relax, clarifying that if they don't leave, the circumstance will become significantly worse. He then requests his sibling to bring him there, stating they'll just go with the flow. She gathers him up and exits the room while the other two observe. She then brings him to a chamber and declares his presence to her grandfather, who is seated in an armchair. The leader of the household simply gestures his hand and expels the young servant from the chamber. The grandfather then places his grandson onto his lap and our young man grins at him while his sister observes from afar. Haired sibling lowers her head, appearing very anxious about what's going to occur. But on his grandfather's knee, our little champion nods his head as if to indicate to her not to fret. Receiving the message, the sister inclines respectfully. Immediately after, she pivots and exits the space, leaving our protagonist solitary with the other two. Just then, our host's father bursts in and yelling, asking why the elderly man called him like that. The grandfather rises and grumbles that his son does nothing but play around and can't even handle his own home. His dad justifies himself, stating he was merely engaging in the networking the elderly man was consistently requesting. In another chamber, our host's mother's partner is receiving a severe thrashing from an unknown individual. Soon the grandfather reaches a cellar with his son and the small MC where the steward awaits them. As they approach, they notice the mother's partner all bound and battered. The leader of the household then requests the steward to cradle the infant, who is grinning at the entire scenario. The elderly man then gives the grandson to the worker, who accepts him with a grin. In the steward's embrace, our young man casts him a doubtful glance while the elderly man offers a malevolent grin. The grandfather then inquires if the inmate has mentioned anything, but the butler replies no. Our host's father then leans in and inquires with disdain what the guy had been boasting about. The grandfather then discloses that the man was boasting about having a relationship with his son's spouse right beneath his nose. Angry, the MC's father shouts that he's going to handle that woman because his standing with his friends is at stake. But the grandfather interrupts him, stating they labor too diligently to ensure that planned union. Still, the man attempts to lunge ahead, but the head of the household prevents him from doing something foolish. With that, the grandfather requests a DNA examination between the inmate and his grandson to resolve this once and for all. The steward then lifts the young master, who grins because everything is proceeding as intended. He then sets the boy on a table and assures him not to be scared, as it will all conclude shortly. With a tiny gadget, the butler punctures our young man's digit to gather a blood specimen. He then faces the inmate and states that since they aren't connected, he could proceed without reluctance. The steward discloses that his child's demise will be compensated for with the lives of his brothers, and our host is astonished. The elderly man's visage dims, his eyes become crimson, and the small one ultimately comprehends it was him. Our protagonist panics at the disclosure, breaking out in a cold perspiration as he understands the dreadful reality. The steward then pivots with a frigid assessing gaze to proceed with his scheme. Our youthful protagonist ponders why the steward is so assured when the examination isn't going to succeed. Just then, the device begins beeping and the elderly man declares with a grin that the outcomes are finally in. Sinner, perspiring profusely, nervously anticipates the outcome of the DNA examination. The host's father inquires what the outcome was while the steward reads the newspaper. Meanwhile, the grandfather observes everything with a stern expression and the boy becomes anxious. With a grin, the butler commends the master and states the exam outcome is negative. Desperate, the inmate shouts that it wasn't him and implores for his life, beseeching them to release him. As for our young man's parent, he just sneers, not really concerning himself with the inmate's predicament. The steward then inquires what to do with him so as not to damage the family's standing. The leader of the household gazes at the inmate with a frigid look, but the lad's father indicates and states that now he wishes to evaluate his own child, just to be. Certainly, our protagonist then freaks out, not understanding what to do in this circumstance. The steward then advances and gathers a blood specimen from the boy's father. Immediately after, he advances toward the small master with the blood specimen in his hand. To purchase some time, our protagonist begins weeping, feigning to be frightened of the needle. This makes the butler agitated and a bead of perspiration trickles down his face. The grandfather then grasps his grandson's hand and instructs him to take the container of blood. On his grandfather's knee, the small champion grips his hand and ponders what he can accomplish now. In his reflections, his fiancée counsels him to remain composed so he doesn't reveal himself. With that, he chooses to take the chance and extends his hand for the butler to extract his blood. The steward then gathers the blood from our MC, who is in his grandfather's embrace. The elderly man puts both specimens in the device to commence the examination. The device then beeps and begins to print out the DNA examination outcome. Nervous, the MC's father requests the butler for the outcome. The steward gazes at the document with a stunned demeanor and begins to shake. Stuttering, he inquires how this could be feasible, not trusting what he's witnessing. Our small champion sees straight through the performance and refers to him as a cunning fox in his mind. The steward then swiftly delivers the outcome to the lad's father. The man grabs the paper and gazes at it intently to discern what it states. His eyes shine green and he becomes entirely astonished and enraged. He then shouts that he's going to eliminate the boy and the woman and lunges ahead. Grandfather halts him with a cry, stopping the assault. With that, the grandfather delivers a strong smack right across our hero's father's cheek. The man is astonished and inquires why the elderly man struck him in that manner. Meanwhile, the steward observes the entire spectacle with an expression of surprise. The leader of the household labels him an idiot and states he was already aware of all his dealings. Our protagonist's father then justifies himself, stating it was merely networking. And I must pause the narration here. I can't believe he truly employed that rationale anyway. Back to the tale. With a grim expression, the grandfather states that nothing that brings disgrace to the family should ever be performed. Our young man's dad then inquires if they should merely act as if they are unaware and squander their resources on the boy. The grandfather then states the boy has utilized a lot of resources and it's time for a transformation mission. The MC's dad inquires what the elderly man signifies by that. The grandfather clarifies that if he endures, he could turn into a significant advantage to the family. And he mentions that regardless, it's time for him and his spouse to attempt for another kid.